A big wingman welcome to the wingman's path, to positivity, to raising your vibration, and to creating a life of your choosing. I thank you for joining me today. My name is Michael Gross. I'm the wingman on this tour of the wingman's path. And today we're coming to you from a side street in Bangkok, Thailand. Actually, I hear a little bit of Egyptian music behind me, actually, as there's an Egyptian restaurant right behind me. And I just wanted to talk about the idea of us being here because we've received so many, Jan and I have both received so many messages from people who are saying, oh, we're so glad you arrived safely, we were worried about you. And it got me thinking about the fact that it never even occurred to me that we wouldn't arrive safely. And today we had a great day. We did a little bit of work and then we went to a temple called Wat Arun, which means Temple of the Dawn, and it's just this magnificent temple made all of mosaic. It went on and on forever. It was amazing. And when I got back, I had gotten a message from a friend who said the same thing. I'm glad you arrived safely. But he continued and said, I would never go there. I would never get on a plane for that long. I would never even get on a plane, he said. And it got me thinking of all the times I talk about creating a life of your choosing and how sometimes one small fear can stop you, right? One small fear can stop you from creating an entire life of your choosing. So it got me thinking of that, I don't want to call it a cliche, but more of a saying, the quote, what would you do if you had no fear, right? What would you do if you had no fear? And while so many of us have seen that quote in the past, we haven't allowed it to sink into our mind, to sink into our vibration, to allow us to let that into our subconscious so we can actually realize that these fears are stopping us from really creating the things we want. So I thought for you and I today, maybe it would be a great idea for us to use that quote or that saying, what would you do if you had no fear, as a practice. And you know me, what do I do when I want to have a practice? I say it over and over and over again for 1 minute until I feel it. When I do that, it gets into my subconscious, right? So then when some of my fears might come up, maybe at that moment in time, it will strike me and I'll say to myself, what would I do if I had no fear? This fear is stopping me from doing something. And I thought maybe the same for you. Maybe you have some fears that are really stopping you from creating the life of your choosing. And I thought maybe this practice can help you realize those fears and also let you realize that some of those fears that are sabotaging you are just fears that are inside your mind, right? They're not real fears. I mean, someone has a fear of flying on a plane, right? They have a fear of flying on a plane, but it's not like people don't fly on planes every day of the year, right? So I thought, wow, what a great one. What would you do if you had no fear? So please join me and let's say that, and let's practice the feeling and the thought and imagine what you could do if you actually didn't let any of these fears stop you, right? What would you do if you had no fear? Join me and let's say it together. And as we say it again, I want you to think about what you would do, what you could accomplish, how you would live a life of your choosing if you had no fear. Join me and let's say, what would you do if you had no fear? Or better, what would I do if I had no fear? What would I do if I had no fear? And believe me, fears are going to come up in every small way, every large way. It's not just the big fears that get you, right? What would you do if you had no fear? What would you do if you had no fear? What would I do if I had no fear? Breathe that in and imagine what you can accomplish and what the desires you can manifest if you didn't let any of these fears stop you from creating the life of your choosing. What would I do if I had no fear? Sometimes you don't even realize you have a fear, right? But as you ask yourself the question, what would you do if you had no fear? And you start thinking of some of the great things that maybe you would go after. maybe some of the great desires you would manifest are the goals that you could achieve. Maybe you start realizing that you do have some fears, and they really are just in your mind. And these fears don't have to limit your life and limit your goals. What would you do if you had no fear? I'm reminded as I'm saying it, it's funny because this practice hasn't even been a practice of mine, but I'm realizing Jan and I had this written on a blackboard in our house. Had to be for a few years. We got this blackboard and we'd write different messages on it. And I just remember that one staying on there for months at a time. So I ask you, what would you do if you had no fear? And I look forward to the answer, and I look forward to you accomplishing some great things and really creating the life of your choosing. I thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day, one in which you don't allow your fears to stop you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Your wingman Michael, signing off from Bangkok, Thailand.